Welcome back, deep divers. Today, we're going to be diving deep into, well, the art of saying no. You know, setting boundaries, reclaiming your time, not letting yourself get taken for granted.
Sounds familiar.
Right. We all struggle with this.
Mhm.
And to help us navigate this tricky terrain, we're turning to Damon Zahariades and his book, The Art of Saying and No.
Yeah, this book is packed with great insights. What I really appreciate is how Zahariades approaches the topic. He's not just like this expert dictating rules.
Right.
He's really open about his own struggles. He even talks about being a recovering people pleaser himself.
Yeah, and reading about his experiences, especially that story about helping friends move all the time, even when he was totally overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah.
It just resonated. It's like, you feel obligated to help.
Right.
Right, but then the resentment starts building. It made me wonder, why is it so hard to say no in the first place?
Well, Zahariades gets into the psychology of it, and
Mhm.
one of the big things he points out is this fear of missing out.
FOMO, right.
Exactly. That FOMO that makes us say yes to things we don't even really care about.
Yeah.
Like, we're so worried about what people will think or that we'll miss some
Mm.
amazing opportunity.
It's almost like we're conditioned to put everyone else's needs before our own.
Right.
But doesn't that kind of backfire? I mean, if you're always stretching yourself thin.
You can't possibly show up fully for the things that truly matter.
Right.
That's where assertiveness comes in.
Okay.
Zahirides is very clear. It's not about being aggressive or confrontational, but about confidently communicating your needs and setting those healthy boundaries. It's about finding that balance. Being
Yeah.
helpful, yeah, but also respecting your own limits.
Boundaries. That's something I definitely want to unpack a bit more.
Yeah.
What does a healthy boundary actually look like in practice?
Okay, think of it this way. Imagine a coworker's always asking you to cover their shifts, even when it's a huge inconvenience for you.
Yeah, been there.
Right. A healthy boundary could sound like, hey, I'm happy to help out sometimes, but I need to prioritize my own commitments this time. It's about being clear and direct, but still maintaining that respectful tone.
Got it. Not shutting people down, but definitely standing up for yourself and your time. Now, Zahariades lays out 10 strategies for saying no gracefully.
Yeah.
I got to be honest, looking at this list, it feels a little overwhelming. Like, where do we even begin? What are some of the most crucial strategies, for really mastering this art of saying no?
Well, I think one of the most powerful ones is just being direct.
Okay.
Zahariades, he really encourages us to skip the stalling tactics, avoid making excuses. Just state your no clearly and confidently. He even suggests replacing phrases like, I can't, with I don't want to, which subtly shifts the whole dynamic.
Interesting.
It puts you back in control of your decision.
I like that. Owning your choices, not falling back on those automatic excuses that just weaken your position. But what if you genuinely do want to help, but you just can't at that moment? How do you navigate that without being dismissive?
That's where the strategy of asking for a follow-up can be super helpful.
No, okay.
Instead of just saying a flat-out no right then, you could say something like, let me check my schedule and get back to you on that.
Yeah.
It buys you some time to assess your availability, maybe revisit the request without feeling that pressure to commit on the spot.
That's a good one. It takes the pressure off and lets you make a more informed decision.
Sure.
Another strategy that really jumped out at me was offering alternatives.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, instead of just shutting down a request,
Yeah.
you're brainstorming solutions
Yeah,
that could actually work for everyone involved.
exactly. Maybe suggesting someone else who might be better suited for the task or, offering to help in a different way. It shows that you're not rejecting the person. You're looking for a win-win situation.
Brilliant. Reframing no
Oh.
as a starting point for a more creative solution. Now, Zaharides also talks about this idea of saying no by category. What does that even mean, and why is it so effective?
So saying no by category, it's basically setting boundaries around types of requests that you consistently decline. Think of it like creating a personal policy.
Gotcha.
Like you might decide, you know what, I don't help people move anymore, or I'm not taking on any new projects during the holiday season.
Yeah, that's a good one.
This way, you're not having to make individual decisions each time, and people know your boundaries up front.
I like that. Setting those expectations early and avoiding those awkward confrontations down the road, it's really about taking control of your time and energy, not letting yourself be pulled in a million different directions.
Exactly. It's about respecting your own needs and priorities as much as you respect the needs of others.
It's not selfish to prioritize your own well-being. Actually, I think it's essential if you want to show up as your best self in all areas of your life.
Zaharides really hammers that point home throughout the book. He reminds us that saying no is not about being rude or dismissive. It's about making choices that align with your values and goals.
So it's about creating a life that feels authentic,
Yeah.
one where you're not constantly saying yes out of obligation or fear.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important piece of the puzzle. Understanding the psychology behind why we become people pleasers in the first place.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more about that. What are some of the reasons we struggle to say no?
Well, a common one is this fear of disappointing others.
Uh-huh.
We worry that saying no will damage relationships or that we'll come across as selfish.
I think that's something a lot of people can relate to, trying to live up to those expectations.
Real or imagined.
Exactly. And it feels easier to just say yes
Uh-huh.
and avoid that potential conflict.
And Zaharias points out it often goes back to our childhood experiences. We might have been conditioned to put others' needs first.
Mm.
It's like we learned that our worth was tied to our ability to please everyone.
It's those patterns. We carry them into adulthood, even when they don't serve us anymore. Zaharis also talks about the role of self-esteem in our ability to say no.
Absolutely. He explains that people with low self-esteem, they often struggle to assert themselves
Okay.
because they undervalue their own needs and opinions.
They don't feel worthy of setting those boundaries.
Right, and it ties back to that fear of conflict we were just talking about. Like saying no feels too risky.
Too confrontational.
It's important to recognize those fears and those beliefs and challenge them. Build that self-awareness and realize that your needs are valid, just as valid as anyone else's.
Shifting that internal narrative from feeling obligated to please everyone to, feeling empowered to make choices that honor your own well-being.
That's the key. And that's where those strategies for saying no gracefully come in, having those tools to communicate effectively without that guilt or anxiety.
Okay, so we've got a better understanding of the psychology of people-pleasing and the importance of those boundaries. But how do we actually put all this into practice?
Well, luckily, Zaharides dives into specific scenarios, and that's exactly what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear those practical tips.
Aw.
Okay, so let's get practical. Zaharides gives advice on saying no to different types of people. I think family's the hardest, right?
Oh, for sure. Family can be tough. It's all those unspoken expectations and like the guilt trips.
Yeah.
Zahariades, he talks about how with family, it's especially important to be super clear about your boundaries
Right.
and to communicate them consistently.
Okay, so let's say you've got that cousin who's always hitting you up for favors. How do you even start setting those boundaries without, causing a major family blowup?
Well, one thing Zahariades suggests is offering alternatives.
Hmm.
So instead of always giving them a ride, maybe you suggest a ride-sharing service.
Okay.
Or another family member who might be free.
Right.
It's about finding those solutions that respect your time, but you're still being helpful.
Shifting from obligation to something more, balanced. What about with spouses or partners? Those can feel like, I don't know, walking on eggshells.
Totally. Zaharides really emphasizes how important boundaries are in those close relationships because, constantly saying yes can actually lead to resentment down the line. Being upfront about your needs, it strengthens the relationship. It shows your partner you're an individual, not just a yes person.
Right.
It's about that mutual respect, not just the no, but the why behind it too.
Exactly.
Okay, so then there's kids, master negotiators.
Oh, absolutely. Zaharides talks about the challenge of saying no to our little ones. He stresses consistency, like no means no. Giving in, it just reinforces those behaviors, those tantrums.
It's setting those early boundaries, right?
Right.
But how do you handle it without feeling like, the meanest parent on the planet?
Well, one technique he recommends is offering limited choices.
Okay.
So instead of just a flat-out no to that sugary snack,
Yeah.
you could offer some fruit or yogurt as an alternative.
Gotcha.
It gives them a little sense of autonomy, but you're still maintaining parental control.
A win-win. Okay, let's move on to friendships. Saying no can get tricky there too.
Zaharides believes that true friends will respect your limits.
Open communication is key. Explain your reasons for saying no, whether you're feeling overwhelmed or you just have prior commitments.
And there's that great line from the book, being a good friend doesn't obligate you to put their priorities ahead of your own.
It's so true.
So true. Okay, let's switch gears to the workplace. How do you handle those requests from coworkers, especially when you're already swamped?
Zahariades, he has a whole bunch of techniques for this. You can ask for a follow-up to kind of gauge the urgency,
Uh-huh.
offer alternatives like we talked about, or just be straightforward about your workload.
Okay.
And it's also about finding solutions. Like, could you refer them to someone else who might be more qualified?
Yeah.
And that no by category thing, that can be a lifesaver at work.
Oh, for sure.
You decide, I don't do office gift exchanges, or I don't cover weekend shifts.
Right. Sets clear expectations from the start.
Exactly.
But what about saying no to your boss? That's next level anxiety.
It can be intimidating, but Zahari suggests focusing on open communication. Explain your current workload. Maybe ask for a breakdown of the task.
Right?
And if you need to, you could even propose a slightly delayed start date.
Okay.
He even recommends documenting these conversations just for clarity.
Makes sense. It's being assertive, but in a respectful way.
Exactly.
Now, another scenario from the book, clients.
Oh, yeah.
How do you say no without jeopardizing the relationship?
Well, he acknowledges that some clients are just, more demanding than others.
Yeah.
But it's really important to protect your time and your resources. He suggests phrases like, I appreciate the offer, but I just don't have the bandwidth right now. Or,
Right.
I'm fully committed to another project at the moment. Could we maybe circle back to this later?
It's about those professional boundaries. And if you can't take on their request, maybe refer them to someone who can.
Right.
Okay, now for a curveball, saying no to strangers.
This one can be hard for people who are naturally inclined to help. But Zahariades encourages us to really think about our personal boundaries. What are we truly comfortable with?
He gives those examples, like
Cool.
declining to watch someone's dog or offer a ride.
Yeah.
Safety first,
Right.
And he mentions those category no's for strangers, too, like, I don't give money to panhandlers, or I don't sign petitions on the street.
It's about having a prepared response, something that aligns with your values. It makes saying no a lot easier.
So we've covered family, friends, coworkers, bosses, clients, even strangers. But there's one more relationship Harriet tackles, maybe the toughest one of all. Saying no to ourselves. We'll dive into that in the final part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've covered saying no to pretty much everyone else. But now it's time to face the ultimate challenge.
Yeah.
Saying no to ourselves.
Yeah.
And those cravings, distractions, those little voices in our head saying, give in, but we know we should resist.
It's tough, but Zahariades really hits the nail on the head when he says self-discipline is like the key to reaching our goals and living a more fulfilling life.
It's that inner struggle, the one that can make or break us.
Right.
He uses some really relatable examples like resisting that extra donut when you're trying to eat healthy,
Oh, yeah.
or turning off Netflix when you have a deadline.
We've all been there.
Been there, done that.
Oh.
So what's the secret weapon for combating those urges?
Well, one of the most powerful tools he offers is using what he calls declarative I don't statements.
I don't. Okay.
So instead of saying, I can't eat that donut,
Right.
you say, I don't eat donuts.
Interesting.
It seems like a small thing, but it really shifts things.
So it's about, like, drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah, and taking ownership.
Declaring, this is who I am, and this is what I stand for.
Exactly. Those I don't statements, they become like affirmations. They reinforce your commitment to your goals and help you stay on track. He even suggests like writing them down,
Okay.
keeping them somewhere visible as a reminder.
It's like your own personal self-discipline cheerleader. But it's not just about those external temptations.
Right.
What about, like, saying no to those negative thoughts we have, those self-sabotaging behaviors?
Zaharias digs into that too. He emphasizes that connection between self-respect and saying no to ourselves, honoring our values, making choices that really align with our vision for our lives.
It's like he's saying, you are worth it.
Yeah.
Your time, your energy, your dreams, they deserve to be protected.
It's a powerful message. And as we wrap up our deep dive into this whole art of saying no, I think one of the biggest takeaways is it's not about becoming some kind of no robot.
Right.
It's about building that muscle, that assertiveness,
Uh-huh.
knowing when to say yes wholeheartedly and when to say no gracefully and confidently.
Finding that balance.
Exactly.
Honoring our own needs, but still being kind and considerate. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the art of saying and no.
Great book.
I hope you learned a thing or two about setting those boundaries and reclaiming your time and energy. And here's a final thought as you head out in the world with those no ninja skills. Ask yourself, how might saying no more strategically open up new possibilities, new opportunities you hadn't even thought of before? Until next time, Deep Divers, keep diving deep. And remember, the power to shape your life, it's in your hands. and in your words.